Good morning and welcome to our Business of Flight Executive Webinar Series. My name is Shannon Gibson and I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business at Embry-Riddle. And this morning I am joined by Ms. Kriya Short and Roger Smeltzer. Kriya has been a member of the Textron Aviation family since at least 2007 and just recently was named President and CEO of Textron eAviation. Joining me in the interview is Roger Smeltzer, a member of the O'Malley College of Business Leadership Board and also a retired Textron Aviation. Thank you both for being here. We're really excited for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So, I am a huge believer in the fact that the best careers grow from the culmination of multiple learning experiences, typically experiences across diverse organizations and multiple leadership positions. I also believe that successful leaders have to come to the table with a unique mix of talent and tenacity. So Kriya, talk to us about your first foray into a leadership position. What were your unique challenges associated with this, and what were your biggest takeaways?
Well, good morning to everybody. I'm so excited to be here. That's a great question, Shannon. So maybe just to kind of level set everybody, I didn't know that I was going to aspire to a leadership role. So I had been with Cessna Aircraft, now Textron Aviation, starting my career in 1996, and in 2011 was my first leadership opportunity. So prior to that, I had been amassing I would say a foundation of technical skills and differentiated experiences. And I got tapped on the shoulder. So we got a new leader at the top and they wanted to expand the sales leadership. And I was actually at that time selling aircraft in the Southwest. And I got a call from a mentor that said, would you like to lead the team in the Southwest? And I was really ready for next. I had been like trying to understand what that would be. And if you think back to kind of that time frame, that was a pretty challenging time for business aviation. We were in the middle of a really deep recession, and so opportunities were scarce. And so I chatted with my husband, and we said, of course, I'd like to do that. So I think the biggest challenge was one, had been part of this team since 2007, arguably one of the most junior members of the team, and stepping into a leadership role where I was remotely based, leading former peers. And if I'm honest, I don't know if I was fully equipped to be a leader of that team. But nonetheless, I think what I learned in that opportunity was one, how to raise your hand and ask others for help. Two, to really to be a leader means to listen and to understand and to listen to those former peers, understand that they did not aspire to that leadership role. And what they really wanted was somebody who would advocate for them, who would support them, and ultimately who would enable their success.
So since that first role, you have served in multiple leadership positions at Cessna and at Textron. I guess the first question is, which was your favorite and why? I know that can be a hard one. But then in general, how have these opportunities been complementary in terms of your growth?
Yeah. So my leadership role has spanned since 2011, and I would say I would never recommend the path that I took to others. I was in that frontline leadership role for about 5 months when I found myself sitting on Cessna's senior leadership team. So I would say my leadership journey played out very publicly and had a significant impact on the organizations that I was leading. So I don't know. It's hard to say which. You're exactly right. Which was my favorite. I think I would give you a couple, and then I'll answer your question. Certainly, stepping into the global sales leadership role was just a humbling and an honor, and it was in what I had really crafted and cultivated as my technical expertise. And so I think that was probably one of my favorite, just because it was within my comfort zone. Now, the contrast to that, I would say, I kind of had set my leadership journey once I was in leadership to say I wanted to be the global sales leader. And so, check, that was another reason why that was such a special one to achieve. My next was, as you noted, leading the customer service organization where I actually got to know Roger. And certainly that was one that I had also asked for. If you ask me, though, the most favorite, I would say probably the one that I just left because it's not one that I asked for. And truth be told, it wasn't necessarily even one that I necessarily had wanted. And I think what it taught me was that sometimes, being pushed completely out of your comfort zone into a space that is foreign can bring those greatest personal growths, and also I think really helped me to think about the role in a way differently than I had the prior to.
That's really a great background. So now Textron's eAviation obviously requires you to bring together all that you've learned in the past and learn some new things. One of the things that's on everyone's mind as we talk about eAviation is safety. So you talk about how safety is everyone's job and why it's essential to what you're now doing.
Yeah, so it is everyone's job, and I think it's one thing if for us to think about the craftsmen and women who are assembling the aircraft, or our technicians who are working on the aircraft in the maintenance facilities day in and day out, or the pilots who are flying our aircraft. Absolutely, it's really critical to understand at that point in time that safety is tantamount to everything that we do, and it's easy to say, well, I understand why they have to do things per the rules and regulations. But if you take a step back, and my career has always been focused on customer facing roles. One of the most impactful things I can remember was early in my career, I would give factory tours to our customers, and there was a kind of poster that we had in our production facility. It was of a Citation Bravo, and it was a customer who had come in to take delivery, and there was a picture of their grandchild in a car seat, and the slogan was, build it like your life depends on it, because somebody's does. And so in aviation, when we think about safety, it's really true. Lives do depend on what we do, and so we all have to have that mindset, because at the end of the day, our industry does have a really nice safety record, and we want to continue that. As we step into the space of electrification, that actually brings some different skills that we need to be thinking about, because we're dealing now with high voltage, which is really not something that has been taught in the curricula of the A&P studies here to date. Even for pilots who are looking at things, we need to be really aware of it. And if you were to look at our Pipistrel Velis Electro, you'll see that we actually have placards and markings there to make sure that folks are aware that this is a different aircraft than what you've been used to in the past. And so absolutely, safety is critical. I'd go a step further, though, and say it's incumbent on all of us, even if we're in engineering or if we're in a support function, because sometimes when we see something, it might hit us a little bit differently than somebody who's in the ecosystem and environment every day. And so I've always encouraged folks that if you see something, say something. You might feel uncomfortable because maybe you're a guest in somebody's workspace, or you just don't know. But the worst thing we could do is see something that gave us pause, or we were curious about, and not say anything, and thereby miss the opportunity to address something that perhaps we just became desensitized to because it was just our norm, and it could be better.
Roger, you have some questions for Kriya planned?
I sure do, and thanks, Dean Gibson. Kriya, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today. And your mission at eAviation is to develop futuristic solutions for urban air mobility, general aviation, air cargo, and special mission aircraft. How awesome is that, to be on the cutting edge of technology? It sure is very special.
Exciting and daunting and humbling, Roger.
It's sort of scary in some ways, but it's really awesome. I'd like to focus a bit more on the operational aspects of eAviation, since I previously worked at Textron Aviation, Beechcraft, and NetJets. After a long career at Textron, notably Textron Aviation and Cessna, you've had many roles in those business segments. How did they prepare you for the role of president and CEO at EE Aviation?
Yeah, that's actually a question that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because if I go back to my career at Cessna and Textron Aviation, every role that I took was intentional and was a building block to help round me out. And I do think that that's really an important thing to think about as you think about a career, because there are absolutely, things that we're passionate about as people. And I believe that if you have a passion, it's really going to help propel you through even those hard times. But there's also a breadth of experience. And so passions change over the course of a career, and interests might change as well. So for me, it really, those passions were kind of founded on customers and getting to know our customers and their stories, which were really impactful to me. And I should say, because the students listening may not know this, but I have a bit of a serendipitous career, because I'm not an engineer. I'm not a professional pilot. I'm not an A&P mechanic. I was a private pilot. I pursued my private pilot certificate when I was at university, and I kind of fell into aerospace because I needed a job coming out of school to pay back some student loans. But what I learned was that you didn't have to necessarily have that technical background. What you had to have was a curiosity, a desire to learn and to connect. And I did that with our customers. And what I loved was that our customers were self-made people who were really kind of taking that next step by partnering with Cessna to ensure that they could achieve their business goals, their personal goals. And I loved that we got to be a part of that. So, coming back to your question, Roger, it was really understanding kind of where was I, where did I want to be, and what was that gap? So I personally looked at it on kind of like a 3 to 5 year plan to understand how could I put building blocks in place that would continue to help grow me. What were the things that I was passionate about? Being honest about what were those gaps, and being really fortunate to have people who poured into me. Because again, without a technical background, I had a lot of gaps. One of my first jobs was selling a cost of operation program to our owners, and I had a private pilot certificate, so I was familiar with the piston aircraft, but I was doing this work for our Citation product line. And there were a lot of systems and a lot of parts on the aircraft that I had no idea about. And I was really fortunate that I was co-located with a service center. And I would just go out onto the floor and I would ask our technicians to show me systems, to show me parts, to help me create a knowledge base. And, the culture of the company that I was a part of was really welcoming to that and invested in me. And so I had people who were pouring into me, helping me to build that knowledge base. And I just was insatiably curious. So I took advantage of them sharing that knowledge with me. I took advantage of being able to learn and grow through flight safety. I did some courses with them. And then I would ask people to say, hey, if I'd like to do X next, what do you think I need to be focused on in learning? And then I would just go find ways to apply myself to do that. Now, that really helped me kind of round out the understanding of what customers want and need in the aftermarket, which then I took a role in a contracts, which allowed me to understand what did customers want and need in the aircraft that they were buying. How did they think about buying aircraft? And how did I, if I wanted to be a salesperson, have an impact on the production facility by what my customers wanted and needed? And so if you continue to just kind of build those little knowledge bases, that really gets you to a place that you would look, some maybe 5, 10, 27 years later and think how I'd never set out to do that. I wouldn't have even known that was possible. And that's kind of how I feel about it from saying it's been a serendipitous career. I'm just I'm a challenge junkie. So I'm always looking for the next thing to learn and grow into, a next hard thing. And so, I think that's just kind of how my career has unfolded, but always from a place of passion, which has been, which, as I shared, was customers, and which has become people. And so whether you're focused on taking care of customers or taking care of your team, those are two things that have to be in balance to be able to be in a position of leadership. And so, to your ultimate question, Roger, those are the things that prepared me. And I don't know if I can say I was really, you'll ever be prepared to be a president and CEO, but certainly the learnings that I've had in those experiences leading up to this have, in many ways, prepared me to take the reins of Textron eAviation. Notwithstanding, all of that knowledge technically is different now. And so I'm back to square one on the learning curve, because, while I do understand systems and power plants and of, conventional aircraft, I don't know anything, and am learning about what it means to be working in the space of aircraft that are utilizing batteries, or talking about hybrid fuel solutions for sustainable flight. And that's humbling. It's also exciting, and I keep leaning into the things that I've learned over the course of my 27 years, knowing that if I am humble, if I'm curious, and if I'm a listener, that I can acquire this knowledge. I just have to understand that it's going to take me some time to do that, and start to build the building blocks for the space of electrification or the hybrid fuel systems.
That's an outstanding message, Kriya. Surrounding yourself with people that understand the business is so key. And that's something that I tell the students when I go to the classrooms. It's so important. They don't have to be everything to everybody, but learning is so important. And thank you for that message. That's really key.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
I think you have to be comfortable in your own skin and be authentic to who you are. That's something, probably one of the largest things I've learned.
Yes, definitely. Well, having Textron as your backer for this new business is surely a very positive benefit. With Bell Helicopter and Textron Aviation and their vast experience that they have, is really to provide you with the tools and that many other companies could only wish for. Do you have any thoughts to share on this?
Yeah, the space that we're embarking on is all new, and it's exciting. And that was one of the main reasons that I said yes when our chairman of Textron asked if I would be interested in this role, because I look at it, and after 27 years, I'm still passionate about aerospace. And I've had the privilege of working alongside amazing people, but also shepherding the next generation of aviators, of aerospace professionals, and ultimately customers. And it's undeniable that we have to be focused on continuing to innovate, and really with an eye towards sustainability. And so when I think about Textron in this space, we are very fortunate, because this is our 100th anniversary as a corporation. Textron Aviation, with the brands of Cessna and Beechcraft, have combined heritages of 90 to nearly 100 years as well. And Bell Helicopter as well has a very long-standing DNA in certifying aircraft. And I think that's really important, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to take the technologies that we are looking at. We have to be part of maturing those technologies. But we also have to be cognizant to the fact that we ultimately are still going to need to certify these aircraft, which is important, because our DNA is in designing, building, certifying, and supporting the best brands, in my opinion, in the industry. And so being able to take our core team here at Textron eAviation and to be able to lean into all that Bell knows around vertical lift, around kind of the helicopter technologies that undeniably will some of those characteristics will be in the eVTOL space, to be able to lean into Textron Aviation and all it knows around designing airframes, designing for maintainability and reliability and support. I would say it has a second to none support support network. In fact, it was rated #1 by AIN this year. And then even leaning into Textron Systems, where they have over 600,000 hours of unmanned flight in its Aerosonde platform, being able to understand their fly-by-wire technologies, their control law technologies, lets us be efficient, because designing, building, certifying, and bringing to market an aircraft is an expensive endeavor. And we want to do so mindfully as a publicly traded company. We are also, besides our customers and our team, we are incumbent to be responsible to our shareholders and demonstrate what we're doing with the R&D investments. And so that's what we're seeking to do. And we get to leverage, decades, nearly a century of knowledge that has been built up over the course of these companies' history. And then we also, as I talked about the emerging technology, welcomed Pipistrel into the Textron family last April, so about 18 months ago. And with our Velis Electro being the world's only certified electric aircraft, gives us the opportunity to take all of the knowledge that they've been invested in from a battery perspective, pull that across into these other platforms to ensure that we're able to tie everything together and continue on this journey with success and doing so efficiently and responsibly.
Yes, and that's a really good point, especially with all the startup companies out there and the risk that they have to get things going, and the backing of Textron and Bell Helicopter. It gives you such a leap ahead with Pipistrel compared to other companies that are out there trying to even get a head start on the whole electric aircraft market. It's amazing. And I know at the NBAA, all the ones they showed, it was just amazing to see where they're at and their struggles to move ahead. And Textron almost has a running start ahead of them. So it's really important to know that Textron has that backing.
Yeah, and it's exciting. You mentioned there are a lot of folks out there looking at this space, doing things in this space, some that have been doing so for, more than a decade. And I think as we think about the aerospace industry, it's important that there are, certainly I look at us to be the leader, as, given our heritage, and I have a lot of pride in our company. But I also think that there will be others who are successful, and to really innovate and push through something that hasn't been, it does take a lot of dollars of investment. It takes a lot of bright minds. And, there will be companies out there who do things differently than we do. That doesn't mean that they won't be successful, and it doesn't mean we won't learn from them. And that's probably the thing that I've found most intriguing in my 2 short months is how collaborative this space has been to really kind of understand really, how do we make it successful? Obviously not sharing proprietary information, but there are a lot of, whether it's the EPIC committee with GAMA, who's really working to make sure that the notice for proposed rulemaking with the FAA in terms of operating in this space, those are the areas where we're all going to need to come together and think through things to make sure that we can be successful, because it's going to propel the industry forward. Aviation is a relatively young industry. There have been, breakthroughs in performance and in systems. I think about, in my own experience, integrated avionics being one of those. And I think where we are going around the electrification, kind of the eVTOL space, potentially some companies will go into fully unmanned. That's going to be a next breakthrough. And so all of us, approaching it from our own business case and working towards solutions will really help to define what those best solutions are going to be.
Definitely. I see where Textron eAviation recently announced the development of the Nexus eVTOL model for use in the passenger, cargo, and the emergency service markets in the advanced air mobility platform. Can you elaborate a little on this new concept?
Yeah, so Nexus is actually got its birth at Bell Helicopter. So it was unveiled some years ago at the Consumer Electronics Show, actually, if memory serves, and really sparked my interest immediately. I got to hear a presentation at Textron's global leadership meeting, and I thought, wow, that is super exciting. And the future is now. Obviously, Bell has had some incredible success in its wins with the government lately, and with that, in the formation of Textron eAviation was to really bring together all things sustainable and moving into that electrification space. And so the Nexus program moved under Textron eAviation's kind of area of responsibility. So we've taken that, and yes, we are working on our Nexus eVTOL, taking what Bell originally had lined out, and as I mentioned earlier, drawing on Bell experience, drawing on aviation experience, drawing on what we know from Pipistrel in that battery space, as well as partnering with Macaulay, who I had responsibility for. So that makes me feel glad to know that we're included in that vertical kind of development cycle with them to really define what this vehicle will be. And, there's a lot that's in the space around what is the eVTOL space. And some are going after a pure air taxi model where the OEM of the vehicle will be the operator of the vehicle. I think that's another area where we at Textron feel that we have an understanding of the consumers of aviation. And we believe that there will be opportunity in our existing customer bases for business use cases of the Nexus. And there will be, of course, kind of ancillary benefits and customers that will also come into the space that maybe wouldn't have been there before. I like to think about it like our Citation Mustang, Roger. If I go back to kind of those early 2000s, Eclipse Aerospace announced that they were going to make a very light jet. And as an answer to that, Cessna said, well, we're going to bring the Citation Mustang to market. And when I think about the number of Citation Mustangs that have been delivered, some 450, that really pulled in people who were in the kind of high performance single engine turboprop space, high performance singles into the jet space to give them confidence because of the integrated systems, the ease of flight, the characteristics and maneuverability of the aircraft. That was a step function change to opening up jet ownership to other customers. And so I think the same will happen in this, in the eVTOL space for us. So we would see it like, as you mentioned, for special missions use, cargo carrying configuration use, civic use, possibly some private use and air taxi use, and then things that we may not even know yet, because the pace of innovation, technology, and the consumer is really feels unprecedented to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of batteries, that's another top subject that I know is out there quite a bit. There's a lot of conversation and questions about it, and I know it's a big topic today in not only aircraft, but in ground transportation, regarding the weight, the cost, the reliability, performance, and even recyclability in aircraft and ground transportation. So what are your thoughts about an all-electric power versus hybrid in aircraft?
Yeah, well, you raise up some very good questions, and this is one of those where I'm just going to say humbly, for those that are engineers in your audience today, bear with me, because again, I have 8 weeks of experience in this space, but I'm learning a lot. So, the first thing is that really, when we think about whether it's an electric aircraft, an eVTOL, we're really thinking about kind of 3 areas where we need to see progress continue. One is in the technology. So from a battery perspective, I have to say, of course, the Velis Electro is EASA certified. We're in the process right now of awaiting response from the FAA on our exemption, because it's nothing to do with the aircraft itself. It's like this corner case of regulations. So the Velis Electro is a light sport aircraft. That's its type certification for EASA. Our regulations under the FAA to be a light sport aircraft stipulate that you either cannot already be certified or you have to have a reciprocating engine. So we're kind of like doubly, challenged in that space. So we've been able to demonstrate that we think there's an opportunity as the FAA has released its Mosaic language. We know that there's a path to the LSA cert for the Velis. So all of that to say, the batteries are there today. We are leveraging leveraging it in the Velis Electro. And what we know is that the power density that you need for the power, to power the aircraft is different than what we see in the automotive industry. And so the duration is not going to permit itself for a long duration flight, but absolutely it's capable for training missions today. And if you look at kind of what those in the eVTOL space are looking at, that's kind of what we're looking at. So the pacing technology of kind of how battery cells evolve over time will of course extend out those durations, but it's not going to be a singular solution. And so to your question, then the hybrid power from a sustainability perspective absolutely has a place. So what that is, again, this is why it's so important that there are so many companies, groups focused on these things. At Pipistrel, we do quite a bit with the European Union in terms of collaboration with other aerospace and industry to propel forward some of these. Most recently, we were involved in conducting the world's first liquid hydrogen flight. And so, continuing to press forward in that, many companies are looking at that. And so we do see that there will be opportunities for both. And so that technology has to progress, whether that's battery technology, whether that's an alternative fuel source solution that lends itself to the zero carbon footprint that we've all signed up to for the 2050 timeframe. But then we also still need regulatory kind of focus, because we know that the regulatory environment has to evolve to permit these aircraft and vehicles to be successful. And we're going to require infrastructure because it's going to be different. Airports are going to look different. We're going to need to have power on ramp side, not only for aircraft, but also for ground vehicles that might be doing catering or pulling aircraft and things of that nature. So those three things in concert are really kind of going to need to come into focus to permit this next kind of step function change in aerospace to occur.
Yes. It's not an easy change out there, just like it is with the ground transportation that we see in highways and auto transportation across the country.
Yeah, it will take time, and it'll take investment, and it'll take tenacity.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's a really good answer. Appreciate that. Where do you see eAviation in the next, say, 10, 15, and 20 years?
Growing. I think, if we just talk about what we have publicly announced today, so we've got the Velis Electro, which we're delivering, which we'll deliver more of once we have this FAA exemption. And we're taking that technology, and we're already on our second generation of batteries. So to the point of battery technology evolving, it is, and it will continue. So we'll continue to make those investments in growing that capability. But then we take those learnings, and we like to, like I said, as a publicly traded company, be efficient with our dollars. So we're trying to pull things through. So we've also announced our Nuva, which is an unmanned, very large cargo drone. It is electric vertical takeoff, but it is conventional forward propulsion once it's on the wing. So that kind of gets us as a step into this kind of a transition kind of phase. And we think this is really important because, again, moving goods, whether over large areas that are rural is a necessity, or as we think about companies who might also want to be reducing their carbon footprint, or who have labor challenges or other might also want to take advantage of this. So we're working on that at Pipistrel. And then that also gives us some of those flight control laws data that we'll be absolutely pulling in and leveraging across our Nexus as well. And so, again, those are the programs that we have publicly announced and that we're working on, and they're going to take us some time to be able to bring to maturation. So, we would look forward to seeing how we're going to continue to grow those, keeping our eyes and ears on what is happening in this very quickly emerging emerging space. So you have to make kind of design decisions, and you need to be, committed to those, but you also have to be agile and nimble as technology changes, as infrastructure gets defined, and as the regulations are coming out. And so that's really where the team will be focused. And then we're going to continue to, as with the Textron companies, and you see this at Textron Aviation, making product investments, right? And so I wouldn't expect us to be different than them in terms of clean sheet design, but we need to continue to evolve the products that we do have. So the other thing that we have going on right now at Pipistrel is to take our Panthera, which is an amazing aircraft, and take it from an experimental category aircraft into a Part 23 certified aircraft. And so, those will be the kinds of block point changes that you might see out of us as we continue in this space.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for that. One thing I hear from people in the public is, what are they going to do with all this urban air mobility with the airspace, with all these airplanes landing in cities? And that's what the common person that doesn't understand aviation, seeing all these air taxis coming in and out of cities. And I think that's their biggest fear. Not so much flying in an electric airplane, but who's going to control this airspace?
Yeah.
And I keep telling them it's going to take the government time to work that through, because they know they have something coming, and it's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a volume of aircraft. It's going to be a change for them that they don't have right now. They go into an airport that's away from the city, but when they start seeing all these airplanes coming into the cities, they've got to figure out where they're going to land them and where they're going to take off and who's going to control them and everything. So
no, that's you raised a really great point, Roger, which is why, first of all, we're going to have to unfold into the national airspace. There's no doubt about that. And that's why this collaboration between industry and regulators is so critical, and why organizations such as GAMA and what they're doing in the space to pull all of us who are working in the space together so that we can be aligned as industry in terms of shaping and collaborating with the FAA, and in the with air traffic control, to make sure that we do this safely. Because again, back to Dean Gibson's point, this is important. We enjoy the ability to move with freedom. Private aviation does that. This will move into some of that public space as well through 135s, or if we're carrying cargo for hire. But we need to be able to do so safely. Now, I think the good thing, a couple of things, and this is just my personal opinion. I like to look at history as kind of a guiding to what might happen, but I also don't want to get hung up on it. If we go back to the very light jet days, when we had Eclipse coming out and DayJet was a key customer, and model that was announced, there was a statement, and you can see it in the press, that the darkening of the skies of these very, very light jets. And, the reality was, 450 more citations were flying, and some number of Eclipses that are flying. And of course, now we have the Phenom 100 as well. But I think, the reality of what is going to be is yet to be determined. Now, but I think your point, Roger, in kinds of where are these things going to be landing? What is the model truly going to be? Is going to be those use cases where I think it'll happen over time, and it'll happen kind of in a hopefully in a proofed out kind of concept, right? Because again, if there is going to be an air taxi model, there will need to be corridors, and some companies have announced that these are going to exist, say, between Newark and JFK. So it's probably not going to be everywhere all the time, right? So we're going to learn a lot through that. I think as well, technology has advanced. So if you think about these integrated avionics systems that we have today, that and ADS-B, and we are able to see where aircraft are. And so technology giving us those answers is really part of that safety equation. And then there are companies out there that are continuing to develop kind of more of this in the unmanned space. Ourselves, we're actually, last Tuesday, I was down at the Choctaw Nation in Oklahoma. We are participating with them, and we will ultimately test the NUVA, which will be unmanned, and we'll need to have, kind of the see and avoid capabilities in their corridor. And so there, again, you see a lot of private and public and industry collaboration coming together to make sure that we're doing this in a fashion that is going to yield an operating model. And it has to be a model that one, the public accept, that makes sense, and is is defensible from a cost perspective to them. Right? Consumers are going to need to understand, does it make sense for them? Customers will need to understand, does this product work for me, and how would I incorporate it into my existing fleet?
Great.
Priya, I love this because you've spent the past few moments really weaving a fabulous picture of the interaction that all our students are going to have the joy of experiencing, whether they're engineering students coming into this industry, they're flight students, they're A&P students, or they're business students, and the business models that are going to surround this within this bigger framework. So you'll probably get an uptick in Embry-Riddle student applications after this webinar. Just
we certainly hope
the excitement you've conveyed around this. And I have to say, these very same students who are watching probably won't forgive me if we don't ask you a few questions that are a little more about what they need to know, what they should do, and a little less industry specific, if that's okay.
Sure. Absolutely.
So their one favorite question, and it's kind of two things. What was the most valuable thing you learned from college? And then what my faculty and I want to know is, what were you not taught that you wish we'd done a better job of?
That's a great question. I think the most valuable thing that I learned, because again, as I've said, my background actually is in liberal arts, is the value of, everything that you're doing while you're pursuing your 4-year. It's about demonstrating performance. It's about building networks and relationships. And it's really about being tenacious and grinding through to completion, right? Which is life, So again, outside of, yes, some engineering functions, you absolutely need to have that engineering degree to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, those types of things. But if you're in a support, finance, if you're in, HR, if you're in business, or you could be in engineering, you can actually chart your own path for your career. Nothing says you have to stay in that lane. And certainly that has been my experience. If I put a plug in for Textron and kind of how it moves talent around, that's what you could expect if you came to work at a Textron brand. What do I wish that I had been taught that I wasn't? This is just a function of me, of when I graduated. So I think you probably are doing this and recommending this, but it was not common when I was going to college for students to seek out internships. There weren't a lot of them. And today, I think it's a really important aspect to really pursue wholeheartedly those internships and pursue as many as possible, as early as possible. I know some companies only will take, rising juniors or whatnot, but I think all internships are valuable because you're understanding what the ecosystem of the work environment looks like, which is different than what it looks like on a college campus. And you're finding out culturally how you fit into that organization and if that's what you're going to like, which is really important because it's got to be, it's a relationship, right? The employer and the team member both have to feel valued in that. And there's no better way to do it than to go out there and get some real world experience and seek out a lot of different opportunities. Try publicly traded companies, try private companies, try something in your major, try something adjacent to your major. Those are all experiences that are going to help you down select so that when you're ready to start your first role post graduation, you feel as ready to go as possible.
That's fabulous advice. And I know if our career services side is listening, they love hearing that because students come into Embry-Riddle as a destination institution, and they're very focused young people and think, I want to work in, and it may be commercial aviation. and that advice to go and try something different. So maybe you don't get the internship at the airline, but you get this opportunity to go work in a corporate aviation setting. It translates, it builds skills.
And those relationships that you build with the people you're working with, you can maintain those. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be part of that organization. Those just become part of your personal ecosystem and network.
So that's great advice for students, but I know I've also got some young alumni watching. So looking back at your young professional itself, if you could give yourself some advice from that period, what would you tell yourself now?
I think I would give myself more grace. I am a grinder and I'm a challenge junkie and I'm always go, 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 go. And I think, that's important, right? To have, but it also, it can make you afraid to fail. And there's you shouldn't be afraid to fail. If you're failing forward and you're learning and growing through that, that's all part of the journey. And one thing that I didn't realize is you're going to work for a really long time. And so, again, you got to be able to pace yourself at that. And there's nobody that can meter that except yourself, because an organization just sees what you're willing to give it and to do. So you have to be able to understand that. And if I could rewind the clock, I might have done that a little bit differently.
I love that you acknowledge that you're a challenge junkie and that presents both pros and cons, as so many other things do. So I'm going to try to get you to share a little bit more about behind the curtain with Kriya Short.
Okay.
So
Sure.
if you could have any talent or skill that you don't have, what would it be and why? These are kind of fun questions.
Oh, if I could have a talent or skill, I wish I was an A&P. I wish I was an A&P.
That's fabulous.
I suppose I could be. And when I was leading services, there was a moment where I thought, I think I'm going to go do that. And then I got moved and didn't have it. But professionally, I just think it's important to understand the systems. Personally, my husband and I are building an RV7. And so I just think it would be a great skill. I have mad riveting skills. But when it comes to any sort of systems integration, I'm going to leave that to him. And he is an A&P and has been in engineering as well. So I feel pretty good.
Well, as the spouse of someone with an RV4, I can acknowledge the challenge there.
Love that.
There's a lot there. All right. So what's your favorite pastime? It sounds like you go, go, go.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're not going?
I go. I run. I'm a lifelong runner. And it just helps me to stay focused and centered. But I've expanded that lately into other, surprise, surprise, other hard things. So I recently did an Everesting event. I didn't climb Everest. I thought, it's you attain the elevation of Everest without, oxygen deprivation or falling in a crevasse. And so while I'm a challenge junkie, I also love living. So, and then my husband, because I did that, he's an endurance kayaker and he invited me to do an endurance kayaking event. So I'd never kayaked before. So I think just anything outdoorsy, staying active, staying fit.
Well, when we talked at NBAA, you said you were not a yoga person. I think I need to take you yoga with me and slow you down a little.
I think I do. I keep thinking I need to just go sit calmly somewhere for 5 minutes. If that would be a stretch goal, so.
Me both. So if you could have dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be and why?
Okay. The Queen of England. I just thought she was amazing. If I think about what she saw over her reign and how the world had changed, and that would have been just fascinating to me. And I just always thought she was so poised and elegant, and somehow always seemed to know exactly the right thing to say. So I hope she'd give me a peek behind the professional queen into who she was as a person.
That would be very neat. So a big focus for our College of Business is that business is also a force for good, that we look to ways to give back to the community in which we engage and are part of. So do you have a favorite charity you like to work with, and why that one?
Yeah, I do. I am on my 8th year as a Board of Trustee member with the Wichita Children's Home. And it is a phenomenal organization here in Wichita, Kansas, which has really grown over the last few years. So not only does it provide residential shelter for youth, but it provides services for foster parents, provides apartment living for young adults who are transitioning out of the home and into life. And we just in 2020 opened a shelter for unhomed youth ages 18 to 24 so that they don't have to find themselves in an adult situation. And so the why is because, I am super passionate about youth being able to be successful and be empowered to find their success. And I roll off this year, and it'll be sad to not be a board of trustees member, but I also am able to mentor youth through that, and we'll stay connected with the children's home.
That's fabulous. Everyone in academia is devoted to youth, and what you're doing is picking up a place that frequently falls through the cracks. So that's really nice. Thank you for sharing it.
Sure.
So the last question of the day is kind of a culmination of everything we've talked about, everything you've learned, everything you've seen, the people you idolize, like the Queen. So what do you think are the most important attributes for effective leaders?
That's a great question. I would say first and foremost, humility. Leaders are people, and, we get up every single day and we have our opportunity to be the best version of ourselves. And we have the opportunity to not be the best version of ourselves. And, that you just have to be humble and realize that there's nothing unique about you. You are human. We are part of humanity, and we just have to work to be the best. But in addition, I would say, definitely curiosity, because to me, curiosity is lifelong learning, and it breeds listening, tenacity, and accountability.
All great. And all things that can be delivered and developed over time, which I love.
I would say yes, learning and growing every single day. That's my goal.
Well, Roger and Kriya, I am so fortunate and so thankful that you were able to spend this time with us. I was at a basketball event yesterday here on campus, and the coach said it best. Time is a resource, and the fact that you were willing to share your time and your talent with our students today is something we're all very grateful for and appreciative of. So thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you at future NBAA events and hopefully on campus here, Kriya. I know that Textron has a fabulous reputation and partnership with Embry-Riddle, and I hope that we get to see what you've discussed today manifest in the coming years, and that we get to be a bigger part of it. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have an amazing rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I would just close by saying, if I said anything that made you curious or you had further questions on, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to be a resource to help you connect and achieve your personal goals and aspirations and professional as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kriya, for your insight. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you, Dean Gibson.
Thank you both. Everyone who's watching, thank you for your time. We look forward to joining more executives throughout the week as part of Homecoming Week. And there's lots more to learn. So I hope to see you at these activities. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.